matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
And we are back, Taylor. How are your organs doing?
They're good, I think. I was really impressed with my liver whenever I get my blood done. So other than that, I'm pretty good.
Great. We're happy for your liver, your lungs, your heart, the whole thing.
My lungs are good. I do remember when I quit smoking, I did cough up gross stuff, and I was like, "You have to stop doing this."
I know.
You know?
I very rarely have like heavy, well, at this point, not anymore, but like when I had like heavy smoking days or weeks, or probably not even a whole week, but like the after effect was noticeable. So
Yeah, it's gross.
It's a real thing.
It's too bad it's awesome. It makes you cool.
It does make you cool.
What are you supposed to do?
What are you gonna do?
Hi everyone. I'm Taylor. If I make it to 80, I'm going to start smoking again. Welcome to Doomed to Fail. We are a podcast. We bring you history's greatest disasters and epic failures twice a week, and I'm joined by Fars.
The next generation is going to be coughing up like sugar dust from all the vape that they're taking in right now.
Honestly. Ugh. Um, well, I want to tell you, I'm glad that we took a break between our episodes because my children are watching this new show on Netflix that is great, and I wanted to recommend it to you, even though it's for children. It is called The Who Was Show, and it is like drunk history for kids. It's narrated by H. John Benjamin, the guy who does like Bob's Burgers and Archer, and it's great. Like each episode has like two historical characters together. The first one is Gandhi and Benjamin Franklin, and they just like young teens playing these characters, and that they're really funny, and it's like really good, and you learn a lot. So they did.
It does look very cute.
It's super cute. They've already watched it like several times. They did Amelia Earhart, Marie Antoinette. We've done. They did Marie Curie, Harry Houdini,
I see Ben Franklin,
Julius
Amelia
Caesar, and Bruce
Earhart.
Lee. Like it's so cute.
Nice.
Yeah.
They are definitely your children.
Yeah, I know. They've been watching it like over and over again. It's so cute. But yeah, I recommend it. It is fun. I've been enjoying it.
Sweet. Well, good for them. They're enjoying themselves. Did you hear about this whole Mexican ship running into the Brooklyn Bridge?
I literally just saw a thing of that a minute ago.
I don't totally know what that means, how people were killed. It wasn't anybody on the bridge, I would assume.
Oh
Right?
no,
It has
there
to
are
be
people on the bridge. Always. You can walk over the Brooklyn Bridge.
I know, but like, would a ship hitting it kill you? I mean, I don't know.
I think if you're walking around the second story, because I was definitely on it one time when there was a car crash right below me, and I had to call 911.
Oh wow. Okay. All right. Well,
But I don't know. I just saw a video of it. I love it down there. I used to be able to see the Brooklyn Bridge from my apartment, and we got married underneath it. So
Aw.
yeah, fun,
that's fun.
fun.
Well, not the
Oh,
story, but
hope
your
everybody's okay.
story. Yeah, exactly.
To a hospital to donate organs. I don't know. Cool. That's wild. Let me find my stuff. Um, okay. I wanted to do some classic big stories. And so I wanted to tell a story that is behind my favorite documentary of all time. Do you have a favorite documentary, Farce?
I think I have a few favorite documentaries. Anything that is animal related on Netflix with David Attenborough is definitely up there. My
Mm-hmm.
Pet Octopus was pretty good.
That's good.
Um, I'm a huge documentary guy, so actually, I was literally just diving into like Auschwitz documentaries that are really fascinating. But like, yeah, so I'm all over the map.
So actually, my favorite documentary is not about animals, it's about people. But I did write because it it was from 2005 and it was nominated for the Academy Award. And I wrote, it lost to March of the Goddamn Penguins.
Which is a documentary.
No, I know. I'm just
Because it's the Academy Award. I would have voted
you
that.
would
Yeah.
prefer March of the Penguins,
Have you
probably.
seen March of the Penguins? It is like a thrilling drama.
I'm a little bit like they should move
So angry right now.
if their life is so fucking hard. You might feel so fucking bad for you, Penguin. Move.
Taylor.
It's not my problem. You live in this shitty neighborhood.
It's very interesting where your empathy comes through. It is deep. It is a deep reservoir empathy that is hyper micro targeted.
I think there's like a reason penguins aren't in charge of the world because they can't even figure out how to move out of their shitty neighborhood.
Well, again, agree to disagree. This will be the agree to
I like
disagree week for
I like
us.
Happy Feet, the cartoon. Anyway, my favorite documentary is The Smartest Guys in the Room, and I also read the book
Oh
this
my
week.
God, that I should have said that because that is a fantastic,
Oh, so good. I watched it so many
so
times. It's
good,
crazy. Yeah.
so good.
Yeah. I absolutely love it. So we're going to talk about Ken Lay, Jeff Skilling, Andy Fastow, and the fall of Enron. Um, and yeah, no, I also read the book, and I've been meaning to read this book, so I'm very excited that I read the book as well. Smartest Guys in the Room by Bethany McLean, who's a journalist from Fortune magazine, and Peter Elkind. So it's great. Watch the movie. I think I bought it on Amazon Prime years ago, and I've watched it several times since then, but it's worth however much money they're charging for it. You
It's
should watch it.
usually free. It's if you have any of the streaming services except
Yeah,
Netflix.
I'm
But
sure you
like
can
if
find
you
it.
do like Hulu or Peacock or like or if you just go on YouTube and look for it, it's probably on there for free.
Yeah,
Which is like a shame because they deserve to make a lot of money every
I
time.
know.
Like
Oh,
it
it's
was
so good.
so well done.
I think the first time I watched it, I was like, it was one of those movies where like all of a sudden I was sitting in front of the TV. I was like, how'd I get here? But I was like, I want to know more about this. This is so interesting.
So I kind of might agree with you that that could have been a better one to win than March of the Penguins. I disagree with your penguin philosophy of life, but I agree with the outcome of your penguin philosophy of life.
We got there.
There you go.
Um, so a little bit of background before we talk about what Enron was and what happened. We've talked before about how I worked at a hedge fund during the 2008 financial crisis and how I have my MBA, so I should know more about all of this. But accounting definitely the hardest class for me in MBA school, and I think it is for a lot of people as well. I think that's either because it's true that accounting is very complicated and can be like made into different things, and you can see things differently depending on the kind of accounting you're doing, things like that. And also, a lot of people haven't even tried accounting and they have the aversion to it, so they're like, "Oh no, well, let's the accountants do it." Like that
So
is part of the story.
I personally think that it is a tool or a weapon, depending on who's using it and what you're trying to do. It can
Hmm.
tell whatever story you want it to tell, and the recipient can hear whatever story they want to hear.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So the example they gave in the Smartest Guys in the Room book is like, so you have a chicken, and the accountant's job is to make it into a duck. So the accountant says like, okay, well, what does a duck need? It needs to have like flippers and a duck bill. So they just like put flippers and a duck bill on the chicken, and they say it's a duck. And you say, well, it's clearly a chicken wearing a duck costume, and they say, no, 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 no. The definition of a duck is the duck bill and the flippers, so it's a duck.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So um so anyway, so there's a lot of accounting things that were used for bad in this, and then a little bit just like what you do at a hedge fund, and what you do when you're like an analyst of the stock market. So when I was at the hedge fund, I was a research assistant for anywhere from like two to four dudes, and sometimes it was a women people, and they were the analysts at the hedge fund, and each of them had a specialization. So someone specialized in like energy, someone in healthcare, someone in like technology or something different, and they knew a ton about that market and like who are the players in it. Every company that's publicly traded, they release a quarterly and yearly reports. They're called a 10K and a 10Q. And the 10Q is like dozens of pages of like where all of their stuff is, their balance sheet, their projections, what they think is going to happen. So when I worked, I would print out 10 Qs all the time for people. So they say, put together a packet for me on this company. So the packet would be like, I'm going to print these couple reports from the company themselves, and I'd get, and I would email all of the banks. I emailed Lehman Brothers because they were still there, Lehman, Bear Stearns, Merrill Lynch, and say, "Can you give me like your stuff on this company?" Then I put it all together, print it, and like give it to my boss, and they would read it and then make decisions.
Great. Can you tell me what they did?
That's what they did.
Where does the money come from?
So here's okay. So a little bit. So
This is
so
sorry. This is more about you and your hedge fund experience than about Enron. I know what Enron did. I'm asking
no,
about
no,
like
I
what.
know. So I think so. Where the money comes from then is so then they say we have all of these I know all the financial information I know about this company. I know what they are projecting to happen in the future. I know what mistakes they've corrected from their past. I have all this information. Then they go to meetings with people at those banks, like at Merrill Lynch. There's a guy who's the healthcare guy. He knows more than the healthcare guy, the hedge fund. He knows so much. He's going to give advice and he's going to say, you should buy this stock. So if you take that advice from that person, you pay that person for their advice. So these banks, even like the small, they were like not just Merrill, but like other big like smaller companies, they'd be like advisement firms. They would want us to get their research in front of our analysts because if our analysts use their research to make a decision to buy on something, then we owed them a percentage or
So
like a fee.
so you're the one with the MBA, so you tell me if this is an accurate perception or recounting what you're saying. It's basically you are trying to find the right fortune teller and then pay them for their fortune.
Yes.
Okay.
And you're hoping that the fortune teller has done a lot of research, that they've like stolen your wallet and looked through it and that they know your last name and they don't like they're not just like out of nowhere. But yes. Yeah, that's it. That they would do that. And then the job of the hedge fund is to continue to grow. So people like very rich people put their money into a hedge fund because they are taking bets, making and doing things that aren't just like putting your money into the Vanguard, whatever. It's just so it's like you're supposed to have more information to make really good decisions with your money if you have enough money to put into a hedge fund, which means you already started with like $1 million if, at the very least.
Got it. Okay.
So and the fee that you pay is for all of those fortune tellers to talk to better fortune tellers, to talk to better fortune tellers to understand what's going to happen next.
Great.
Yeah.
Sounds doesn't sound risky at all.
So, I mean, so then they would oh, but also, so not just the company, so they would do that, and then also companies will have an earnings call where the CEO will get on a call with investors, they'll ask them questions, and they'll talk about, what it is, and then investors can vote on things like that. Like if you have like a Robinhood account and you have like four stocks, or if you have stocks somewhere, you might sometimes get invited to an investor call to like do a vote. Usually you don't if you're just like a regular person with a couple shares, but if you're someone who has like a 10% holding in something, you're definitely going to go to those calls and you're definitely going to attend those meetings.
Yep.
Um, there are other organizations that are like government controlled, that their job is to put like a credit rating on things. Like there's also like individual credit rating companies that say like, is this stock safe to buy anyway? Things like that. So there should be a lot of checks and balances before you make like big decisions, especially if you have your money in like a hedge fund or even into someone to invest for you.
Right. That's the
Does that make
idea
sense?
anyways.
That's the idea. So.
Which I will say, like now with the, increased usage of ETFs and that being like an investment vehicle, like it's a much safer and better play. The whole concept of putting all your money in a stock to me today sounds insane.
Totally. It's high risk, but it's high reward if it works.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So in this story, everyone is going to blame everyone else. The CEO has signed off on this, the accountant signed off, the CFO said yes, the business kept going. And there's a lot of people being like, well, how can things go bad if I have so many nice things? Like there's no way things are bad. Things look really good. So that's what a lot of people thought.
It's like the story of
Eh,
the U.S. economy.
I mean, it's a sort of, yes. Um, in today in 2025, there is an Enron. There was an Enron crypto coin that like went up and down
Seriously?
in like one day. I couldn't figure out who owned it. It was like on Wikipedia in a weird section, so I don't want to harp on that, but that existed. And then Enron also came back as a company, but the CEO was the guy who's the same guy who owns Birds Aren't Real. So I think he just like got the name Enron back. Anyway, it's gone, but whatever. So Enron is a huge energy company that ends up spectacularly failing in 2002. But it started in the 80s and 90s. And we'll talk about it yeah, start there. So what did Enron do exactly? This is like, I asked ChatGPT, I was like, tell me like I'm four. Like, I just can't. Like, it's complicated. Also, like, a lot of times they didn't know what they were doing. So that
Well,
also is hard.
not in the beginning though. In the beginning, it was a very simple
Yes.
binary
But
thing.
later, they
Yeah,
turned
yeah,
it
yeah,
through.
later on, yeah.
So it's an energy company. Energy is changing in the 80s and 90s. Natural gas is actually starting to be a thing. Natural gas used to just be a something that was burned off when you were drilling for oil. There was no way to move it great distances. And then in the 80s and 90s, there started to be. And so because they were able to move it like a commodity, it becomes something that you can trade, you know?
Yeah.
Um, what they really wanted to do, and what Ken Lay, who's our CEO and founder of Enron, who I'll talk about more, he wanted to deregulate the market on natural gas and energy, to be able to like set the prices. And he had all these grand ideas of like putting energy across like the entire world with like big power plants, natural gas pipelines, and he and Enron would help control that market. And a lot of their big bets were in that line for that thing. So it started off with just natural gas trading as well. So like you have gas to sell someone who wants to buy it, Enron would be the middleman. So you would be like, I have all of this natural gas. Someone else wants to buy it. Enron will say, I will figure out how to get the gas to this person, and you pay me a fee to be able to do that.
Well, didn't they own the pipeline network?
Later they will, but first
Okay.
they were just the traders.
Middleman.
Later they're
Okay.
going to build, and when they build the infrastructure, that's also part of the problem because you should maintain infrastructure.
Right. Right.
Like that
Yep.
makes everything harder. They also later they'll do stuff with electricity, broadband internet, the weather, and create their own internet portal for trading energy that no one had ever had done before. We'll talk about that later. So the problem, of course, is in the accounting. Do you remember the type of accounting that Enron used?
Mark to market accounting.
Mark to market accounting, correct. Which means, and I'll talk about it more later, I think, as well. You put your earnings, all potential, et cetera, as revenue right now. So if I signed $100 million deal with you for the next 10 years, today I get $100 million. I don't get it, but I get it right that I got it. So yes, so mark to market, you are booking your all your potential earnings as revenue right now. So that creates a whole bunch of problems because you don't know how much money you're actually going to realize. Usually when you book a 10 million, $100 million contract for 10 years, you're going to divide that money up between the years in your projections. And then you're going to have to report on what you actually got later as well. Financial firms can use mark-to-market accounting, and a lot of them do because it forces them in those cases to rebalance their sheet every time, like very, very often, because the market keeps changing, which totally makes sense. Because if like if my $100 million deal is my 100 million $1 stocks, and then the stocks go up to $1.50, then I get to rebalance.
Yep.
So also, like, you have to keep making deals because you're not going to get the revenue from your deal that you booked today for the next 10 years. You have to keep booking deals in order to make your balance sheet grow.
Yep.
So there's that. And so that's a problem as well. So it kind of becomes like, you know, a scheme where you just like continue to do that and you don't actually count for what actually you're bringing in. Um, they also would put revenue as recurring, which is like different, but also something that Enron would do in as they did this. So not only would they say I'm making $100 million today, it's like I'm making $100 million every year. And you're like, that's blatantly not true. So how did it happen? Who did it? Key players. First off, the founder, CEO, and chairman of Enron was Ken Lay. He was like a former farmer, a poor guy wanting to like make it in business. He got his PhD in economics. He's super, super smart. Everyone in this story is smart. Like no one's dumb. They know what they're doing. You know?
It's worse because it's so intentional.
Exactly, exactly. So he loved the idea of deregulation, wanted the market to set the prices for things. He lobbied in DC, especially during the 70s, during the energy crisis. The Bushes loved him, especially H.W. Bush. Like really, like they were like really good friends. There's like clips in the movie from like a Christmas card that he like sent him like a video Christmas card from President Bush. They like spent a lot of time together. He was doing a lot politically. He thought he was going to be Treasury Secretary. That was really one of Henley's goals. But he ended up working in business instead. Also, he spent a lot of his time also running various nonprofits and things like that his like family did, like the Lay Family Foundation did a lot of stuff. And a lot of this is in Houston. He was so he was a CEO. He didn't really like do the business stuff. He wanted to be more of like a figurehead guy. So he would like go to all the meetings and like, get take people out for like the fancy dinners. His family used the private jets so much that sometimes like Enron executives couldn't get to meetings because like Ken Lay's kids would be using the private jet.
So I remember my going off the memory here was that I walked away from hearing the whole story of like he was kind of like a he wasn't intentional in the fraud aspect. He was just willfully blind because he was like everything's working, everybody loves me, everybody's giving me awards. Like why is this bad? Like everything's good.
Exactly. Like I think I don't know when I'm going to say it, but like King Charles, and who's still Prince Charles, had dinner at Kenley's house.
Seriously?
Yeah, because they were trying to build like a big energy plant in England. So like he's loving that aspect of it. Absolutely. And if you see him, he looks like an old man. He's like balding, like
Yeah, he seems like a pleasant old like he
yeah.
doesn't seem like an evil mastermind. The one you're
They
gonna get to
describe him as
next
yeah.
is probably the evil one.
They describe him as a little Elmer Fudd looking, which I think is true.
Yes, I can see that. I think that's a Texas thing probably too, but yes.
So he like also like when they were used like the jet thing was just like a little bit of an inkling where like they shouldn't be doing that. They also used his sister's travel agency to like book all the flights so she get a percentage of things too. So it was a little stuff that's like kind of gross, but like so they ended up have like the board made them do like an open bid for new travel agencies and his sister's travel agency won anyway, even though her rates were higher. Like stuff like that's gross.
Yeah.
Like that's happening. He in 1980, so he was doing really well. In 1980, he had a $300,000 house, which is in today's money is $1 billion. It's not, but I don't know, but probably a lot more.
It's close. It's
It's
close.
close. He was married. He ended up marrying his secretary, and he eventually his wives would like have Christmas together. Like everyone got along eventually because there was like a lot of money involved. He like didn't want to, like you just said, he didn't want to hear the bad news and didn't want to tell anybody bad news. So he would kind of like run away from those conversations and like you wouldn't tell him anything because he didn't want to hear it anyway. He wanted to like enjoy like the lifestyle that was happening. He ended up starting Enron and being at Enron because he helped negotiate a merger between a company from Omaha called Inner North and then Houston Natural Gas. So he merged them together. He got $3 million out of the deal, and that new company would become Enron. So they moved everybody who wanted to. People were pissed from Omaha to Houston, and then they had their business base in Houston, which is like a huge energy place anyway.
Yeah.
A lot of them there. He in the it's mid 1980s. There's some deregulation happening. People are starting to do more energy contracts. There's like a lot of opportunity here. So he has his new company. Originally, they hire a marketing firm to name it, and they name it Enteron, and they printed a bunch of business cards. But I guess Enteron is also another word for the digestive tract, and people started making fun of them, and so they had to change it to Enron.
That's a little sad, but
That's how we got here. Um, so it was expensive and stupid, but they had to do that. Enron will come from that company. It's actually in a lot of debt when they first started because it's like a merger of two kind of not doing well companies. But eventually, Enron will have 20,000 employees. The year 2000, which is the year before its bankruptcy, it reported $101 billion in revenue. Um, and it's safe to say that like most people that worked there just did their jobs and like didn't know that there was stuff going on.
you might get this later. Do you know what that would you say
101
110?
billion. I'll tell you, they do like kind of flip their earnings, and you're like, oh no, it's not revenue, it's loss, pretty much.
Is that really what it was? Like they had nothing.
Yeah, wait till I think I have it at the very end, but yeah, I think they had like some amount of money that they had posted revenue for 2000, and then they had to flip it, and be like, actually, it was a loss. It was like a very
Okay.
close number. Yeah. So, a lot of people I think worked there and didn't know, and like it ruined their lives. Like when I worked at NYU in the business school, this woman, I can't remember her name, so I was trying to find her on LinkedIn. I couldn't find her, but I was like, oh, what did you do before this? And she was like one of the like vice deans of the business school, and she was like, oh, I worked at Enron. Like not only did, whatever she did there, she probably did like a fine job. Plenty of people just like did their jobs and didn't understand this massive fraud was happening. A lot of them did and took advantage of the situation, but if 20,000 people, like not all of them knew. So I'm sure you remember the pictures of like the people leaving and crying and holding the boxes full of their stuff.
Yeah, I think like some of these people were like line workers. Like they
Yeah.
were like they're like I just get my car and go to this place they tell me to go and do my job and I come home. Like
Yeah.
they weren't
So,
making high level decisions.
yeah. So Kenny, so Kenny Boy is the nickname that Ken's wife gave him and that also George Bush called him. So Kenny Boy needs to get people to work with him. He's going to find a few people who are instrumental in the rise and fall. But in the beginnings, like I said, it's bleak. There's a huge loss. They're moving the offices. They have to turn it around. And one of the people that he picks right away is Jeff Skilling. Um, I think that Andy Fastow is the actual criminal, but Jeff Skilling is someone who thinks he's smarter than everybody else, and so the rules don't apply to him.
I would say Andy Fastow was the um he was the brute who took care of the things that Jeff
Yeah,
Skilling told them to do.
and but Skilling would like, yes, yeah, I agree.
I think. I
So
don't know. You were close. You're close.
we'll get close. We'll talk more about them in detail. So Jeff Skilling was the president, COO, and later the CEO for a little bit of Enron. He was hired by Lay to make money. Like that's just like he was like a money making guy. He came from Pittsburgh. He went to Southern Methodist University to get away from like the industrial East. While in high school, he worked really, really hard and he made like a good amount of money and he lost it all in the stock market while he was like 15. So he liked doing these big high risk things like always. He loved doing that. When he went to college, he did the same thing. He like got a job, made a bunch of money and lost it all in the stock market. Um, he applied to Harvard for his MBA, and this is the famous story that the interview wasn't going really well, and the interviewer was like, "Jeff, are you smart?" And he goes, "I'm fucking smart."
Remember that?
You know. So he went to Harvard, obviously, but when he was hired at Enron, he hadn't worked in energy and he hadn't run a company before. But he was considered just like a really smart guy who was like a revolutionary. So they were just excited.
What was he hired as again?
The president and COO.
Got it.
Yeah. So, a few things about Jeff. He insisted on mark-to-market accounting. He wouldn't join them if they didn't do it. So, a little bit more about it again is like you book earnings when they come in. So, like a little more about it. That means that like it's immediate you immediately claim the present value of all expected future profits as current income. So, you could book earnings upfront for deals that might last 10 to 20 years.
Or that might not happen at all.
Exactly, exactly. So you count it as current even if there's no cash received yet. Um, and so because of that, like I said, so it was an income tomorrow, income today situation where like you have to keep making new deals because you already booked all that revenue. Like you can't like spread it out over a certain amount of time.
It's worth pointing out that like the nature of corporations at this point was the stock prices always had to be rising.
Yeah.
And if you do mark to market accounting and you book 10 years worth of, I guess, revenue bookings, I don't know what
hmm
you'd even call it in this case, it's all fake money, anyways. If you book it now, then you have to get the like two more of those deals to
Right.
show increase in growth.
Right.
But again, you're talking about like $100 million deals. There's only so many of those in the
Right.
world to obtain.
Yes. So you have to like you create them, but they're not good deals, and then they don't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's that. Like I said, financial firms can use it because they need to rebalance every quarter, but so Enron was the first non-financial firm to use it, and they had to get permission from the SEC in 1992 to be able to do it. They had to like ask to be able to do it. So there's this docu in the documentary Smartest Guys in the Room. There's a sketch where they show like a little video that they made with like Skilling and one of the accountants, where he's like, "I have a new idea. It's called HFV, Hypothetical Future Value," and they were like joking about it because like it was like he was pretending to use an accounting system that was like even more corrupt than what he was using, and everybody was laughing about it. Um, and sometimes when we start building big things like infrastructure, the problem is going to be like I, or they're gonna like make it even worse. So like they say, okay, I booked this $100 million deal to build this power plant in India. It didn't work. It didn't happen. We started to do it. So I'm gonna sell the pieces. I have a little bit of infrastructure. I have some like this, and this. I'm gonna sell it. I'm gonna sell that all for $10 million. That should be that should be that $90 million loss, but instead they counted that $10 million as more revenue. And you're like, but you never got the $100 million. Like you never, and you spent all this money anyway. So like it just like didn't, it just wasn't gonna make any sense. Um, and this is something that like the bad deal situation, I feel like I've seen that at places where I've been like I've worked at places where the sales team got paid after the deal closed, and it didn't matter if it went through or not. You know, like the deal closed, but they failed in onboarding and they never used it, but the salesperson still got paid. And they had to change that because it was like they're signing bad deals and the onboarding team is getting screwed and because they're not meeting their goals when their goals were impossible.
There's 100 different examples
Yeah.
of this mentality, the short-term gain for the
Hmm.
long-term credibility and reputational loss in the industry. And yeah, it's disgusting. But yeah.
Yeah. So other things about Jeff, the culture that he brought was really savage. Like he did a thing where you had to rate your peers every 6 months on a 1 to 5 rating scale, one being the best, and then he would fire 15% of the company every 6 months. And the VPs would spend like weeks in a room together having to grade every single person in their department, and then they had to come up with a unanimous grade and then do the firing. And that's just like besides the fact that that is weird for morale, it also is really expensive. Like it costs so much more money to hire someone than it does just to continue to work with someone, you know?
Yeah, this also is like the Microsoft model that the guy after Bill Gates, I forgot his name, but he put into effect. And it's like it goes back to like my mentality towards like the business schools of America of
Hmm.
like fostering the worst aspects of humanity to work towards capitalist ends. And it's like you don't have to.
You don't have
Like there's a
to.
different way to do things, and it's one that makes people not feel horrible every day.
1,000%. And like they said, one thing they said was like MBAs would come in from Harvard all green and happy, and in 6 months they'd be assholes. Like they would
Yeah,
say
that's
they're
not
like,
shocking whatsoever.
I forgot to write this down, but Skilling also worked at McKinsey before this. So like that's also a culture of like we're the smartest people here, and they like consult, but their consulting is like, a 19-year-old gives you some advice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You're
of
supposed to give
course.
them $7 million. Um, so yeah, there's that. He also had like 9 midlife crises. When he started working at Enron, he was like kind of chubby, regular, like middle-aged guy. Eventually, he started to work out. He I wrote, obviously not something weird like Jeff Bezos, but still a lot of working out. Like, but like, like they do. And he also would have an affair with someone at work and get a divorce. At one time, he does try to save his marriage. He works for half pay, half time, but he doesn't get to save his marriage. But he does marry another Enron employee later. He also wanted to do like very manly trips. And there are some women in this story, but like it's obviously still a very male-dominated world. And like when I worked at places, I knew people who would go on business trips and hire escorts, and you knew that they did that, and you just didn't say anything about it.
It feels like a New York story.
Yeah, maybe, but it like makes like women uncomfortable being in those places, and like I
But
work,
that's what I'm getting. Like the whole
yeah,
the business school mentality of like it doesn't have to be that way.
yes,
It can be
yes,
healthy. It can be normal. People could feel good about themselves. Like it doesn't have to be gross.
yeah,
I will say though,
totally.
like
No,
I, I I have told multiple people I won't hire an MBA because of that. But now that I know you have an MBA from, I will. I think I would take that back.
thank you, I appreciate that. But I mean, it's different. It's different. You know, mine's different. And if I went to Harvard, an MBA, like I get it. Like I get some stereotypes are real. I get it. I think we've talked about this before. Um, so they would do things like go on motorbike trips, and like do like adventure daring things. And later, Skilling would be when he was starting to get depressed when things were going poorly, he would sit in Houston bars and chain smoke and drink white wine. And one
It kind of sounds
bartender,
fun.
I know, one bartender later who was interviewed was like, "Oh, I didn't know he was, you know, a multimillionaire. I just thought he was quiet Jeff." And I'm like, "That's stupid. You're a dumb bartender. That's a dumb name." But fine. And when people ask Skilling what Enron does, he says it's a cool company, which is like,
Which is a key example of they didn't do anything.
yeah, exactly. Like, he didn't like it's cool, promise. And like if you went there, you'd be like, this is cool,
Hey,
all those
do
things.
you do you? I didn't read the book, so I don't know this. I only know what the documentary said. Do you think that he always knew it was bullshit?
I think he thought that it was going to be okay.
Somehow the markets would feel him and the vibe check what happened and
Yeah, yeah,
interesting. Okay.
yeah. I think he thought that's I think he thought like, we can keep doing this. It's going. Let's keep going. Um, so there's some other people as Enron transitions from being a typical energy company to an energy trading business, which is what is going to come. The documentary starts with Cliff Baxter. He was the head of M&A, and he dies by suicide. He's like the really the only I guess only, maybe other people did as well who were like other employees, but like he's one of the most famous ones. And he shot himself in his car in like the middle of the night. He just had like a hard. He was kind of manic depressive, like knew that the shit was about to hit the fan. And guess where he was born?
Germany.
Amityville.
No way.
Yeah,
Hometown boy. Love it.
yeah. So there's Cliff Baxter. There's Rich Kinder. He was trying to help get things back together, sort of in the middle of this. He wanted to be CEO, but then Skilling's going to be named CEO in the mid 90s, and Rich Kinder will leave. He's the person that they say could have saved them because he was someone who could have turned it around and knew that their accounting was bad, and he like could have changed it. But Lay was like, no, like we're still going our direction, and so they let him go. And then Rich Kinder started Kinder Morgan, which is a huge investment firm, and he's just like one of the richest people in the world.
Good for him.
Congratulations. There's Amanda Martin. She's a lawyer. She's part of Skilling's inner circle. One fun thing that she did is she saw that she was being paid $75,000 less than the men doing her job, plus they were getting bonuses she wasn't getting, and she brought it up, and the next day they gave her like a $350,000 check and changed it.
Jesus.
I know, so good for her. She ended up uh, like there's a couple like personal like affairs and stuff. She had an affair with another high up named Ken Rice. It doesn't like super matter, but she's in the documentary, so she's like talking about it like past tense. She doesn't seem to be in jail or anything. Um, in the beginning, it's like nobody can touch us. We're working constantly. We're super excited. We're on top of everything. We're printing money. Like everyone's just like super stoked. And then they hire Andy Fastow, who I think is like the biggest actual like did criminal things, like touch criminal buttons, you know?
100%.
So he was the chief financial officer. He was married to a woman named Lee. She's from a really rich Houston family called the Weingarten family. So he's just like they kind of keep up their thing of philanthropy. They're like they want to be like the richest people in Houston. People didn't really like him. He's kind of a jerk. Kind of like they didn't like love hanging around him. He would like yell at people if they didn't do what he wanted, things like that. And his idea is to move the money around. So if you like move the money to different companies, it's not your debt anymore. Things like that. So he would create a bunch of special purpose entities. He called them things like LJM1, LJM2. There's some Raptor vehicles that he worked on. And basically, he would send the debt to other companies so he wouldn't have to report on it. So he would say, like, oh, I'm working at LJM 3 hours a week. It's like a subsidiary of Enron. But he was spending most of his time there trying to figure out how to get like profits into there and to like split it off as like an entirely different company. And he did this in a bunch of different ways. He ended up, he got so much money from this. He ended up like paying himself like tens of millions of dollars, like during all of this like movement money thing. Um, and so that like manipulated the earnings, which made people want to buy it more, which made the stock price go up.
Well, it also rebalanced the balance sheet because
Exactly. So then,
the
and then
the,
you
the
then you
debt
think
goes
everything's
to
fine.
that guy. I don't have
Yeah.
this debt.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Later, when Bethany McLean interviews him for an article in Fortune magazine, she interviews Enron people. Everyone will leave, and Andy Fastow will come back in the room and say, "I don't care what you said about Enron, just don't say anything bad about me."
God, what a piece of shit.
Just fucked up. It's not all his fault, but like a lot of the straight up fraud is his fault. So those are the main people. The actual business, again, like they're an energy business. One of the first big scandals that they had, which was like years before the rest of it, was a scandal at Valhalla and Enron Oil. So Valhalla is a suburb of New York, and there was like a tiny office in Valhalla, New York, and their job was to trade energy, and they were trading it in like a new way. It wasn't traded like a commodity before, so like you don't have to actually ever have the oil. You can trade it without ever having it. So like If I say like I'm going to buy 100 barrels of oil from you at this set price, then I can sell those 100 barrels at that price to someone else, and you can buy them at all those different things. And you don't actually ever have to touch oil
It
if you're
it
just
it
trading
it,
it.
it becomes a financial services company
Yeah.
and not an oil company.
Yeah. So, and they were the people that were actually making the money. So on like a call with the board, Skilling will say, keep making us millions. Like you keep making the money, you keep doing it. But a lot of the ways they were doing it is by betting like way outside of any zone that should be comfortable. They were supposed to stay at a certain percentage and like not gonna go crazy and make these like really big trades, but they were, and there was no oversight. So for a long time they won and they would just like give themselves money and they didn't care. Like Ken Lay knew that they would like, give each other, $100,000 bonuses all the time, but they're making, $100 million, so who
Like, who
cares?
cares? Yeah.
you know so they let that happen. They moved some of the money to a bank account in the Cayman Islands that was not on the books, which is not good if you have to do that. Like that's bad. And again, like Lay would say that he didn't know they were doing this, but they were betting way over the percentages they're supposed to bet, and it was all uphill until it wasn't. Um, and so they were hiding what wasn't working in these other accounts in the Cayman Islands and continuing to do what they were doing with the idea that the market's always going to go back up. Like we just got to keep gambling. We got to keep going. Got to keep doing it. Eventually, they will get caught. Some of them are going to go to jail for it. And all in all, Enron Oil lost $140 million. So it was like a lot of ups and a lot of downs. One big down.
Yeah, big downs.
So after that, it seems like in retrospect, you'd be like, oh, maybe these guys need to like work on their shit a little bit more before we invest in them. But that was like not what was happening. Enron kept growing. There's a guy that ran Enron Energy Services named Lou Pai. He built the trading desk, and his
I love
job,
this guy.
I know, his job was to sell energy services to industrial end users. So basically, just sell energy. But he was never really in the office. Everyone was excited about it, and they did have the ability to actually deliver gas places because they were an energy company, but also. Um, Most of it was just like betting. They worked with a auditing firm called Bankers Trust, which is like still like a financial services firm that exists. And Bankers Trust was like, this isn't what we think it is, and they left in the middle of the night, and they deleted all of their files to do with Enron, and they like never talked to them again. And Lou Pilot came into Skilling's office and was like, they're gone. Like they just left because they were like, this is too
They
weird.
knew it
It's
was
not working.
shady.
Yeah. So he had a big office that he was never at. And then the side of him, he loved going to exotic dance places.
Dude, this guy
Um,
lived the life. He like did he marry a stripper? He like
he
walked away
did.
with like $50 million, married to a
More than
stripper.
that. He ended up
Just
leaving his wife
dipped.
for his girlfriend. Yep, for his girlfriend. He cashed out. Eventually, he got the exact dancer pregnant, and then divorced his wife, and then married her, and then all this is kind of happening, and he's not really even at work during the day. And he's just like a legend. People are like he's never in his office. Like, where is he? What does he do? And finally, Skilling was like, you can't. You have to leave. Like, you're never here or whatever. And he was like, cool. He cashed out with. Lou Pai made $250 million selling
Dude,
his shares, and he became the largest landowner in Colorado.
this guy won. He
He won.
won. Brilliant.
And so whatever Lou said, Skilling was like, oh, we're doing great. Skilling would believe it. He'd tell the investors the stock would go up. Like that was it. It's one the stock to go up. So a couple other things that they tried to do to like actually make money, like when they and continue to make money. There's a huge international arm of Enron run by Rebecca Mark. Skilling and Rebecca did not get along. They like really didn't like each other. She would travel 300 days a year all around the world, and she had kids. She would like barely see her children, and she would buy power plants and build power plants like all over the world and try to like make deals. So she'd be like, "We're gonna build this power plant in Germany, supply you with this much energy at this much money, like fix that price, and then we can like be your energy supplier, for example." Um, it never really was successful for a bunch of reasons. Like the infrastructure is a huge one. Like you have to build things, you have to hire maintenance people. You have to hire in some of these places that like trying to build a power plant in the middle of the jungle, you have to hire like armed guards. Like it's not safe to be in those places. Also, there's governments involved, and the governments want to regulate their energy, like especially in like developing countries. And also, the people can't afford to pay those prices once they have it up anyway.
Yep.
So a lot of it didn't work. There was that deal that I told you about in the UK with John Wing, who was someone else who worked with Mark, and that's when Charles had dinner at Lay's house to work on that, which it didn't work out, but that's interesting. Um, It's also California. They had a huge deal in California for energy, and California had deregulated their energy. So Enron would bet on the weather. Like they would be like, okay, we know they're going to need more air conditioning because it's hot, so we're going to, raise the price because of demand. And then they would also do things like talk to energy people in California and start rolling blackouts to change the demand. And it was like not illegal, but no one had ever done it. And then when they did it, they were like, oh, you shouldn't do that. And they're like, okay, now that you say I shouldn't do it, I won't do it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
they did it anyway. So the governor Jerry Brown was like, "How are they able to do this?" And then like eventually, like they were able to like I don't really understand how it like worked out in California. But Skilling did make a speech where he made a terrible joke when he said, "What's the difference between the Titanic and California?"
The
Um,
lights were on the Titanic when it went under.
yeah, terrible. And like people died. Like,
Yeah.
you can't turn the AC off in the summer just to like raise the price of energy so that you make more money.
If I recall correctly, what this had to do with was the fact that you can never store surplus energy.
Yes.
So states would route energy, and Enron served as the central focal point on where they should route energy to. So they were making bets on we can increase the price per unit in California based on the weather or the time of day,
Hmm.
whatever it was. Let's route energy out of California
So they
so
can't have
that
it
they
during
can't
those
have it.
times.
So it'll increase demand, and then
Thank
we'll
you.
have
That's
limited
exactly it.
supply, and then yeah.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. That's helpful. Yeah, so they did that, which is terrible. They also, okay, this I think is freaking crazy. So they had a deal. One thing that Skilling wanted to do next was to sell broadband internet and to like sell internet like you sell like your phone lines, which is like essentially what we have now, but they didn't have that then, you know? So they had a deal with Blockbuster. They almost invented Netflix.
Okay, I know. I remember this when you said something earlier, and it reminded me of the Blockbuster story because they almost had locked this in, and for
Like
some
it was
reason
like
they
the
didn't fuck with it.
technology wasn't there yet. Like that's like it's like the last mile problem. Like you can get it all the way to the town, but getting it to everyone's individual house, like that's hard. And like Blockbuster didn't have the technology, like didn't have it yet, but they made a deal with Blockbuster to like make content. And they were gonna sell movies for $5 a piece. Or you could rent the movies for $5 a piece, like on your TV, but it was like science fiction.
Could be
But
end
also
running and chilling now.
exactly. Isn't that crazy? I can't believe they almost invited Netflix. They didn't, but they like booked that deal and then it totally fell through, obviously. Um, but when Skilling announced it, he in an investor call in 1998, it was like brand fucking new. Everybody's like, that sounds amazing because Netflix started with the mail. Like they couldn't do this. The stock soared 34% in 2 days after they made that call because they were so excited about it. But like nothing ever happened to it, but still wild. Um, Oh, they also tried to do corporate electricity to sell electricity to like big corporations. So they had a deal with like the USC schools and some like big sports teams to do their energy in the like, stadiums for a certain amount of time. But that didn't but that was hard to maintain because they had to pay for like the maintenance men and the electricians and they had to like have a customer service wing to be like, the lights aren't working in Shea Stadium. What do we do?
Yeah.
And they couldn't and that was like hard to do.
This
There's
kind
also
this kind of reminds me a little bit about the whole tariff situation,
mhm,
a little bit because the U.S. made such a huge switch from manufacturing to services,
mhm,
and then if you're confused and you're like, "Well, I'm a services company," but I'll just do the manual part too as an
right.
afterthought. It's like, well, you're gonna fail at both because
Yeah, you don't know how to do that.
your DNA is flipped.
Yeah, totally. Um, there's also Enron Online, which was like they built a website to trade energy. It was like,
This is their biggest.
yeah, which I think is, I mean, I feel like it was glossed over in the film. I feel like I learned more about it in the book, but like it was obviously a conflict of interest because like they are an energy company, but you could only trade energy companies on their own platform.
Yep.
It's interesting. So I feel like Skilling, this is like his smart part is he's like, there's so much opportunity here. What can we do with it? And a lot of it's stuff that like is true now that there are like private places to trade things and Netflix and Hulu and all those things, but then it wasn't. But he's like, look at this opportunity.
Well,
So
that wasn't public. That wasn't a public thing. I don't think. I don't think as a consumer you could just logged in to do the
no,
trading.
but like companies could, which is like the first step,
Right.
you
Right.
know.
Yep. Yep.
So Also, during all time, Fasto has all of his like little companies all over the place, so all this stuff is going on. And then meanwhile, the big guys are selling their stock all the time. Like Ken Lay is making huge sales and like raking in billions of dollars all the time. And he says it's like to diversify his portfolio and whatever, but like, it's suspicious. The high of Enron stock, it'll be at $90.75, will be the highest it ever gets. And by October 2021, it's going to be 26 cents per share. So these people who are cashing out early are making a ton of money. There's a video also in the documentary that I'm sure you've seen where like they're at like a staff meeting and they ask the head of HR if they should invest their entire 401ks in all of Enron, and she's like, "Yes, absolutely," and like smiling and laughing.
Yeah,
It's
not good.
gross. It's gross. Also for the broadband stuff, like they they were like, "Oh, it's going to happen. Don't worry." So at one point, they had investors come to Enron to talk about um, the broadband. Also reminded me one time my boss went to an investor meeting at McDonald's, and she was like, "They gave us McDonald's." I was like, "Girl, what do you think was going to happen?" She was like, "I don't know. I thought they was something nicer."
That'd be
Anyway,
so fun. I would love to go to a meeting and it's like,
I know. I thought that was funny. Um, but they had investors come to Enron and they told everyone just to like go to the floor where the broadband team is going to work and set up your station and just work here during the day. So like one woman like later testified that they had her like bring her pictures of her kids in a plant and she just like spent all day on the phone with her family members just pretending to work. And then so the people went in and they're like, "Oh my God, there's like 1,000 people on this floor. This is so exciting. This broadband thing's going so great." And then when they left, everybody went back to their other offices because they weren't
yeah,
actually working on it.
it's like a really good analogy for their accounting
Yeah,
practices.
exactly. They also had this like silly thing where their tagline was the world's leading energy company, and then they were like, "We have a new tagline. Do you remember what it is?" It's so
Oh
stupid.
man, I can't.
It's going from the world's leading energy company to the world's leading company. Business, 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 charts, charts, charts. Like,
So
what are you talking about?
ludicrous.
So, but obviously, like things are falling apart. They're losing a lot in international deals. The broadband doesn't work. Jeff moves to CEO, and you're probably like, why isn't anyone doing anything? Like, who is supposed to be checking like what they're doing? So at this point, Jeff, who knows what's going on, puts together a group called the Risk Assessment and Control Group, the RAC. But people, and so he did a couple things that are like, okay, you can't fly a corporate jet around the world every day for $1 billion. Like you have to do something a little bit less flashy. So a little bit of that, but doesn't really matter. Like all that cost cutting doesn't really matter. He would also like be like, oh, we'll bring down like this, like besides the like the every half year firing 15% of the people, he would also move people around so much that sometimes every night they would have a crew in there moving people's desks around because he'd be like, okay, well, this department isn't working, so let's move their staff to another department. And then just like the accounting, be like, oh, this department just grew, you know? And you're like, kinda. But also, you just like move people who don't know what they're doing to a different department, and they're like, people would be like, "What do you do here?" And they'd be like, "I don't know, I just moved here."
It's like a stupid person pretending that they're smart and everybody clapping and saying that was so smart.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. Yeah. They also obviously have an accountant. They have an accounting firm called Arthur Anderson. So this is it's like a firm based in Chicago, been around forever, made by a man named Arthur Anderson like 100 years ago. And their people worked not just for Enron, but they worked in Enron. They were like Arthur Anderson people, but their offices were at Enron. Like they spent all their time there. They got their lunch from them. Like they were there. And they're the people who should have seen everything, but they let it slide. And it's like a bunch of people making decisions. Some people will be like, "Oh, I thought Jeff, we said we could do this. I thought we could do this." It's that complicated making the chicken into a duck thing. Like their job is to find those loopholes. So in 2001, Arthur Anderson is one of the world's largest companies. It is one of the big five accounting firms. There's Deloitte, Ernst& Young, KPMG, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and Arthur Anderson. Arthur Anderson, they are going to be gone by the end of 2002. They're not going to survive the Enron scandal. They are the people who do the shredding. That's like the famous shredding of stuff. So before they were subpoenaed, when You could see the stock was falling, everything was happening. They again took that loophole, like you can't shred documents after you've been subpoenaed. We're going to be subpoenaed at 6 in the morning. Get every fucking shredder in Houston to the office. And that's what they did.
which
Amazing.
tells. So at first, it's funny when you started the whole Arthur Anderson thing. I was like, there's a normalization of things that can happen, and it's like the frog in the pot boiling,
Sure.
where you don't know until it's too late that it is too late. But then they also did the shredding, which means
You're doing
they
that. Yeah.
saw what was. They must have put the pieces together before the indictment,
Yeah.
obviously.
Obviously.
But like, yeah.
We have a friend whose job is to she works technically for the US Postal Service, but her job is to take shredded documents and put them back together like a puzzle.
I would say I'm glad somebody does that job. I'm glad I don't have to do
Yeah.
that job.
So okay, when does stuff start to happen? Like everyone, it's kind of weird, but they still earnings are still going up. Like their stock price is still going up. Like when does it start to get weird? People start to figure it out. On April 17th, 2001, there's an earnings call with Skilling, his CEO, and a analyst from Merrill Lynch asks him why he can't see the balance sheets. He says every other publicly traded company has the balance sheets in their quarterly report. Like where are yours? And he's like, I can get them for you. I just like whatever, don't have them. And Skilling calls him an asshole
Yeah, I remember this one.
on like the live public call. People are like,
Yep.
"Oh my God, don't do that." But he never like took it back, and he was like, he's an
Which
asshole.
like everybody like it's weird to think like why that became such a big deal. And the more I learn about that world, the more I learn that like complete and utter transparency is a prerequisite for like the
Hmm.
market working,
Hmm.
even if you don't like the outcomes. And
Hmm.
the fact that a CEO would call somebody an asshole for asking the most obvious thing, it's like it'll be like if Tim Cook were to go online one day and be like, cell phones suck, like we shouldn't use them anymore,
Yeah,
and we should all just like use carrier pigeons. Like, well, we gotta really dig into Apple. Like, this is like one of those things where we have to look into this. It's
yeah.
so
It's not.
blatant and obvious.
Yeah, something's wrong. Like
Right. Right.
you
Either
should
the
be able
mental
to do those things.
faculty is falling or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. And that was really a big part of it. So people were still writing articles about how well they were doing, and then Bethany McLean, who's our author of our book, is writes an article for Fortune magazine called How exactly does Enron make money? And she didn't like making the accusations, so just like, what exactly is going on? And then people start to kind of look into it. The person who probably first crossed the line was Andy Fastow because he was moving his money, like literally moving money in and out of companies to hide it and like hide the debt. And it is now like the 2000s, beginning of 2011, the dot-com bubble bursts. The market is no longer a bull market. Like things are not going well for a lot of people. They also blame 9/11 for some of the things, like people's distrust in the market, but you're like, that's not, doesn't make sense. Skilling leaves in August of 2001, and he just says like for personal reasons, but he's just kind of burnt out, also kind of doesn't care. He like doesn't want to do it anymore. He just like wants to leave. So he leaves in August. And then a woman named Sharon Watkins, she's the first whistleblower. She sends an internal memo to Ken Lay being like, she said in the memo, she says, quote, the company could implode in a wave of accounting scandals. She's like, what is this? And like and talks to him about it. Ken Lay will say he didn't get the memo and like didn't talk to her about it, but like she testifies in front of Congress that that's what happened. On October 16th, 2001, Enron announced its first quarterly loss in over 4 years. And like that's crazy to continue to be growing and growing and growing and growing. Like that's suspicious, if nothing else. Like the way that they were growing so much. So they were kind of admitting that some of their balance sheets, were not what they expected to be. Um, it made the equity go down 1.2 billion, and the stock dropped even further. And then the SEC was like, "Well, this is weird, that things were like going so well for so long and now they're not. What is going on?" And they launched another investigation, which is when they started to do the shredding. On October 22nd to 24th, 2001, they revised their financial statement. Okay, so this is the thing from before. They revised their financial statements from 1997 to 2000, acknowledging accounting errors that had kept the debt off the balance sheet. So they erased 613 million of past earnings and added 628 million dollars in debt.
So insane.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is when I said earlier about radical transparency, I wholeheartedly believe in that. And I think that if you have a mess up on your books from the previous year or previous 2 years, you should absolutely, as soon as you know, disclose to everybody that that happened.
Yeah.
But in this situation, if you have like, what is it, 10 years,
Yeah.
just go with it. At that point, like,
Totally. Be like make I mean I'm sure there were so many times when like skilling and FAFSA like made other people feel stupid, you know? Because another part of it is like accounting is really confusing. People either it is or people like think that it is, so they don't even try and all of those things. So they'll just be like, I don't know, maybe this guy gets it. You know what I mean? Like, did you ever watch Better Off Ted? Have I ever talked about
no.
that? It's 2 seasons. It got canceled during the first writer's strike a long time ago, but it's real cute. And it's about a company called Viridian Dynamics, and it's like, just like this. Like they just like you don't really know what they do. They have like scientists who kind of do like hilariously evil stuff. Like they make like fake meat and like I don't know. It's cute. But there's a whole episode about a project called Jabberwocky, but no one remembers who's supposed to do it and no one knows what it is. So they do a presentation about it and they're like, it's faster than a cheetah. It's going to change everything, blah, blah, blah. And then they give it to like the R&D department and it's just like a folder with nothing in it. And they're like, let's send this to the Japan team. Send it to Japan. And the guy in Japan is like, do you guys get it? And they're like, yeah. Don't you get it? And he's like, I just thought there'd be more than one page. And he's like, but I get it. And they're like, yeah, yeah, we all get it. Like
Yeah, you just go with it.
you just go with it. Like you don't want to be the guy who's like,
Also,
I
you
don't
go
get
with
it.
it because like this business is paying for your mortgage, it's paying
Yeah,
for your kids' college, it's made some of
exactly.
y'all millionaires. Like, why would you ever try to mess that up?
Yeah, absolutely. Such a good question. Um, so that's happening October 24th, 2001. The SEC announced a formal investigation. And then this is when, the stock totally tanks. They fire Fastow on October 24th, finally. And in early November, people didn't want to give them any money, obviously. Like they couldn't actually get any real loans, like real money to try to fix it. Basically, they were like, you guys failed at being a company that like takes care of their books. And the stock kept continued to fall by November 9th. Enron tried to merge with a place called Dynegy, which was like really weird because Dynegy was like a small group that was across the street from them. And they like would get made fun of by Enron guys being bullies to them all the time. And then they were like, why don't you buy us? And that deal was $8 to $10 per share. But it got worse. In the end of November, the agencies downgraded it to a junk status. So it was a junk bond. Like they didn't recommend anybody buy it. And they didn't have any money to like get out of it. Dynegy decided to say no, and the stock went under $1. So also like all those people who they told to invest their entire 401k into Enron stock have no money anymore.
Yeah.
And they never were recouped on their money. Like a lot of those people just lost everything. And that's like, 20,000 people. It's like not a lot of
And
people.
like I think like this was like the turning point in American history around like you stay with one company, you believe in
Yeah,
them, you do your thing with them. So like a lot of these people were there for like 15 years,
totally.
So
Yeah, yeah. On December 2nd, 2001, Enron filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and it was one of the largest corporate failures in history. Like I said, it went from $90 to 26 cents a share. Shareholders lost an estimated $74 billion in value as it totally collapsed. So people got in trouble, obviously. And it ended up being the U.S. Department of Justice formed an Enron task force, and they interviewed and charged almost 2 dozen Enron executives and associates where they were convicted of crimes from fraud, conspiracy to insider trading. Ken Lay was convicted in May 2006 on 6 counts of conspiracy and fraud related to deceiving the public, and on 4 counts of bank fraud. He was going to be in prison for decades, but he died of a heart attack before he was put into prison. So
Lucky him.
yeah, he didn't have to go. Um, Jeffrey Skilling was convicted in 2006 on multiple counts of securities fraud, conspiracy, insider trading, and making false statements. He was sentenced to 24 years in prison, which was reduced to 14 years after appeal and then dropped further. He also forfeited $42 million. That went to compensate some of the victims. He served 12 years and was released in 2019.
Yeah.
Andy Fastow pled guilty in 2004 of two counts of conspiracy, securities fraud, and wires fraud. He admitted to concocting the schemes to hide the debt and inflate profits while enriching himself, which is like criminal shit. Because he testified against others, because he's a jerk, he was sentenced to 10 years, but ended up with 5 because of the cooperation, and he was released in 2011. Other executives went to prison. Richard Causey served 5.5 years. Ben Gilson, 5. Michael Cooper, 3. Mark Koenig was the head of investor relations, served 18 months. Lou Pai was not charged with any wrongdoing, and he just got away. My other notes say he got $270 million. So Lou Pai wins
I'm
out
proud
of
of
all
that
of
guy.
this. And then Arthur Anderson was indicted for obstruction of justice, and a jury found him guilty of destroying audit documents. And that was actually overturned by the Supreme Court in 2005, but it didn't matter. No one would want them to be their accountant anymore. They lost most of his clients and business, and it ceased business in 2002. It had been around for 89 years, and that was it.
Um, no, the whole story is super interesting, and is a great example of moral hazard around simply buying into the ethos that is
Hmm.
in the culture around someone. It reminds me, you remind me a lot in this conversation. I was looking it up right now. So if anybody's interested in like corporate failure stuff or like how this all ends up happening, several things remind me of the story of General Electric, GE, around how GE went from being like a maker of things to a financial services company in large part because of their pension fund. And you also touched on 9/11, which is really interesting because
Hmm.
4 days before 9/11, Jack Welch, the probably the first celebrity CEO in the
Yeah.
world,
Hmm.
he was a CEO of GE. He had stepped down and Jeffrey Immelt took over as CEO of GE. And then 9/11 happened, and I don't know if people know this, but GE made a ton of money off creating and selling jet engines.
Mm.
And then nobody was ordering jets because nobody was flying, and the fleet
Interesting.
was already huge. And so, anyways, long story short, Freakonomics episode 452 is called Jeff Immelt Knows He Let You Down, and it's them interviewing him about the sell off of GE and the decline. And it is such a similar story where, I mean, they didn't go under, obviously, but like it's a great story about how you get distracted, you get diversified, you think you're really big and you try to be really
Hmm.
big, but you don't scale the right ways. And like it's this story minus the transparent and obvious fraud of Andy Fastow
Yeah.
moving debt around.
Hmm.
So anyways, that's out there. It's a super interesting story.
That's interesting. I'll listen to it. Also, forgot to mention there are some new laws since this happened. There's one called Enron's Law, which is the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002, which means that there is now a public company accounting oversight board that audits the auditors.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you gotta be doing a good job. You can't self-regulate if you are the auditor. And then just there's also stronger auditor rules, and then also increased penalties for shredding documents and deleting files and destroying computers and all of those kind of fun things that people were doing.
Yeah, one thing that also came from that I forgot what the name of it was, Master of Lies, I think, with Robert De Niro playing uh, Madoff, Jack Madoff.
Mm, hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Bernie Madoff.
Bernie Madoff, yeah, sorry. He they also kind of reference the fact that the regulators are never as smart as the perpetrators because if they were as smart as the perpetrators, it would become the perpetrators because the money is
Yes.
so enticing on the other side.
That fucking sucks, but that's totally true.
So, yeah, it's a weird conundrum, but
Yeah.
anywho,
Wild.
super
But yeah,
interesting.
please watch Smartest Guys in the Room. It is so good.
Yeah, I might
It has
actually.
like such amazing like every like chapter in the movie, like every new scene that they bring up like a really fun song of the time also. You know, like they play like the Red Hot Chili Peppers California song.
Yeah,
It's so
that's
good.
that's when the brownouts were happening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just wonderful. You'll watch it and be like, everything's a conspiracy. It's crazy. And then you'll watch it again. It's just great.
and they brought up the recall election that got Arnold
Hmm.
elected, and yeah, it's a whole web that they weave.
Yeah.
Um, I love that one. That's very fun. Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Taylor.
You're welcome. Thanks for spending so much time with me. I feel like we talked for a long time today. Two long ones.
Yeah, but they were good ones, I think.
I think so too.
Hopefully you, the audience, will agree that they're good ones. And if they were good ones, go ahead and subscribe your family members, your loved ones, your children, if they have iPhones. And also write to us at doomedtofellpod@gmail.com. Find us on the socials that Taylor manages exceptionally well at doomedtofellpod. TikTok, Insta, Facebook. That's it.
Yeah. Also, but I lost it. I was going to tell you. Oh, guess what episode number this is?
200.
It's 199.
No way.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Well, we're almost there.
So we almost made it. Next episode is me. I have another big one that I'm excited about doing. That
Here's
I need to get to. You should see me. I was listening to this book at 2.75 speed this morning at chess club. And other parents were like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I have to learn about Enron. I have to finish learning about Enron." Thank you. Happy chess day. I'm gonna drink a Bloody Mary. Like it was so fun.
There's something so interesting about like when humans do things as a conglomerate, and I don't know for some reason because like we can't escape our failings of being kind of shady and corrupt. Like it's so fascinating when like it happens in a very grand way because it's always explosive. It's never like a flame going out. It's like a explosion going off. And so
I know.
anyways, yeah, thanks for sharing. Hopefully it'll be a fun one next week too.
Yeah.
For
Thank
both of
you.
us, I think. So
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you. Have a good evening.
do we have any mail?
Oh no. Email us
Please
if you want to. I'll answer.
we will answer and read it if you want, or you don't. So
Oh
okay,
yeah.
awesome.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah, listener mail. Write to us. We'll read it. Or if you tell us not to, we'll
Oh wait,
paraphrase
I
it.
do have something. I texted you. I'm so sorry, everyone. My cousin texted me. She's a teacher in Ohio, and she went to the what's it called? King's Landing?
Yeah, Kings Island.
King's Island, which you talked about in, oh my God, episode forever ago.
I don't know which episode that was.
Because I'm gonna look it up. Because you did one about roller coaster accidents. And it is episode 90. No, I'm sorry, episode 69 was click in and buckle up roller coaster accidents. And you mentioned in Kings Island, there was a time in the 70s where at a high school party, right? If I remember, a dude was
Graduation
drunk
party.
and he
Yep.
tried to climb out of this like little Eiffel Tower. He was trying to climb it or whatever, and he fell. And she sent me pictures of the Eiffel Tower because it still exists. And her students dropped eggs off of it this weekend.
Fun fact: he didn't fall. He got impaled by the
Oh,
elevator, the
really?
lift that went up and caught
Ugh.
his body as he was trying to cross between separate beams. It's a gruesome story. Go listen to that one.
It's a good one. It's a good one. So yeah, listen to that one. Thank you for sending that in. That's real fun and so funny that like you were like they should have ta taken that down.
They definitely should have taken that down. It's a
Just like
crime
hose it
scene.
off and then we're back there. So,
Yeah,
you know,
it's
that's what it is. Cool.
sweet. Well, thanks, Taylor. We'll go ahead and cut it off there.